Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, descent. Yeah, are we descending? Are we going low? Are we descended? Listen, find out. Well, you've watched the episode. You know kind of where it's going, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we've stumbled upon a new thing. Speaking of stumbling upon something, become a Patreon member. Patreon.com/IABD. Great way to support us. And you can stumble upon a treasure trove of things, all of our past episodes, see video of us, also get the It's All Been Done radio hour stuff. That's some great bonus stuff there that you will feel very privileged to have for very, just a few cents. Just a few cents, maybe a few dollars. It's very reasonable. Go there, patreon.com/IBD. And now, get into descent with us on It's All Been Checked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. Your regular hosts are here and decent.
This is Steven.
And Keith, beaten to the punch.
Jimmy-Jerome, sorry, I threw Steven back. Maybe Steven isn't decent. I don't know. You have to be a Patreon donor to find out if he's wearing a shirt or not. I will say, even the Patreon donors don't know what we are or are not wearing below the waist. So
That's right.
Well, especially me at the moment.
Not this week.
jeans. First impressions of these sets.
I thought it was kind of decent, but you know. Yeah.
Before we get into first impressions, Keith, you thought decent. Decent was what I had in my email as a typo, but you said you made a better title. Tell us why.
Most of what Data explores in this is what it means to be a good person. I mean, literally, he was asking, if I can only experience negative emotions, wouldn't that make me a bad person? Mm-hmm. And I don't remember if something to yeah, that's right. It was in a counseling session. He said, or she said essentially that he was a good person from what she knew. Mm-hmm. And I don't think she literally used the words like a decent person, but it felt like this was that was the overall theme of what was going on. So
we'll get into this obviously as we get towards the end, but I liked it a lot more until about the last 10 minutes. And then I was like, well, this is one I'm not rushing back. I'm not running back for part two. I was just like, nope. I thought the concepts it developed early on were really interesting. I enjoyed Angry Data. I'm here for him. Mm-hmm. And then I was out on him very quickly. It's like, why can't he just have his own journey? Why do we have to tie in this other nonsense? But anyway.
I'm with you, Steven. Yeah. This is not a two-parter I enjoy. I will. Before Star Trek Picard premiered, I watched exactly 3 episodes of Next Gen as like a refresher to get going on it. And those 3 episodes were based on Hugh because I knew he was returning. Right. And I was like, I don't know who Hugh is. I don't really remember who Hugh is from Next Gen. So let me refresh my memory before I watched Star Trek Picard season 1. Mm-hmm. So I watched Iborg and I watched this 2-parter. And I won't tell you whether or not Hugh appears in part 2 because I don't feel like whether he does or not isn't as important as we talked about Hugh in this first episode and his impact and if he's the reason for this problem. And I will say that's explored further in part 2, whether he appears or not. So that's why I rewatched it. That was only like 2 years ago. Not even, maybe. I don't know. Maybe about 2 years ago. So I already knew that Descent as a 2-parter was terrible. And so I was not anxious to watch it. And I let myself get distracted because, well, this is the least amount of notes I've taken in years for this podcast. I'll show the Patreon donors. But I also just read the first half of the novelization because the novelization is just called Descent and it's both halves. So I looked up what is the like cliffhanger moment, which is actually like exactly halfway through the book, like maybe 2 pages off of the halfway point. So I was like, perfect. And I just read up to that point, and I'm saving the other half of the book until we are closer to watching it. Yeah. But because I just watched that, and this novelization is very close to the episode, it doesn't take a lot of liberties like some of the other novelizations. I was like, I can half pay attention to this episode, and I will be fine. And I was, and I really thought about the next day because I watched it 2 days ago. Maybe I should pop that back in and rewatch it because I wasn't paying enough attention. I said, nah, I read the novelization. I'm good. Yeah, that's how so that ought to tell you how I feel about the episode going.
So we start with the poker game, which is always good.
Yeah.
If cheesy sometimes. And I thought Einstein was Mark Twain. I was like, oh no. I was like, oh, okay.
That would have been a very different scene.
Before he talked, I'm like, oh, is this Twain again? Come on. But I'm glad it was Einstein.
I mean,
And-
Twain was good in small doses. It was just when they gave him a whole episode, he got annoying.
Yeah. Part 2, Time Zero Part 2
Was bad,
Speaking of
yes.
bad two-parters.
And that was how we started the season, and now we're at the end. But that would have been interesting bookends if we had
Yeah.
Twain. Anyway.
A couple more things there. One, do the poker games ever just end? Isn't there always like someone's got to go to the bridge? It was
I'm
like,
pretty sure many of their poker games end naturally, but those don't make for good episode scenes.
Right, and especially not in the opener.
So we don't see the other dozens of games they play that end more naturally.
The Stephen Hawking thing is cool, and I wonder if at the time it felt more stunt casty than it does looking back. I don't know. It still makes sense and it's cool.
You're right, Stephen, not Hawking, that at the time it may have felt odd to do it, but in retrospect, it feels very nice that they included him with Einstein and Newton, because I feel like history has borne out that he is going to be regarded in that breath, at least so far. I mean, we're barely past his lifespan, but his reputation, unfortunately, if you remember last season, I think Star Trek Discovery dropped Elon Musk's name in a similar lineup, and that has not aged well already. So Star Trek wins some, they lose some. Hawking was a win. Dropping Musk's name was a loss.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Data has to explain the joke to Newton about the apple falling from the tree, and then they mentioned that the apple falling from the tree was an apocryphal story, which I really appreciated, that this holodeck version of him thought it was true, even though it wasn't in real life.
That's funny.
Very interesting. One of my 6 or 7 notes from the novelization actually starts the book from Isaac Newton's perspective. You get his perspective on that whole scene. And he's like, this is bizarre. Why am I being forced to play this stupid game? But I can't stop playing this game. It's making me. What's going on with this? I don't understand these people. I don't understand why I'm here. It was really fun written. I will go ahead and get this out of the way that the novelization was written by Diane Carey, who, when I was a kid, was one of my 2 favorite Star Trek authors, along with Peter David, who we've already talked about on this podcast before. She has written some historical romance novels, original stuff of her own, but if you look on Wikipedia, most of her writing are franchise, a lot of Star Trek. Star Trek is her main bread and butter. Most of her books were original series. Dreadnought was like a 2-part original series. Dreadnought and Battle Stations were her really popular original series novels. She also wrote Best Destiny, which established Kirk's backstory and his Destiny in the Stars that ended up being canon through movies and television using parts of that backstory. Okay. And in fact, Dreadnought, which I just mentioned, was loosely adapted, and don't blame her, into Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness, her version does not have Khan in it, and it is good.
She is,
but they took the basic concept of this really bad Federation ship built for bad purposes and then trying to murder Starfleet officers, and they covered it up. They took that from the novel.
I loved all that. I loved all of that.
So that is her novel, and I recommend reading it. It's great.
Yeah.
I've read Dreadnought.
It's when the name Khan gets dropped, I'm like,
right.
Done. Yeah.
So check out Dreadnought and Battle Stations. That was her. For Next Gen, she wrote 5 novels. This is the only novelization, the other 4 original novels. For DS9, she did a lot more novelizations, including the series finale and the Dominion War stuff and Trials and Tribulations, which she co-authored with David Gerald. For Voyager, she just did novelizations except for 1 novella. So it seems like the longer she went along, the more novelization she did and less original fiction. And the last thing she wrote for Star Trek was she did the novelization of Voyager series finale and the Enterprise series premiere. So she ended that. She is still alive, but she's only had a couple of books published in this millennia. And those 2 Star Trek novels, really, and Unimatrix Zero, which was another episode adaptation. She did adapt the movie SWAT into a book novelization. Which seems a little bit, but I love Diane Carey. I had her email back in the day. I would email her things like Happy Arbor Day just to feel some connection, and she'd always respond. It was very gracious. So
keep getting them checks.
Well, Jimmy, I have some disturbing news for you, or something that might come as a disturbing revelation to you. Yes, I think you've once again been taken in by the conspiracy. If you pay attention to what her initials are, it's really her all along. She got you again.
Return your tray tables to their upright and locked positions, everybody.
my God.
She's everywhere.
You know, she was only 12 when the original series premiered, but I love it. I love it so much.
She was a prodigy. That's what this. It's like Ender. The whole thing is just been like engineering.
Oh my God, you got me. I love it. I will say, early on in the book, I was a little. I did not look at the cover to see who wrote it as I started the book. I should have, but I got to like the second or third scene of the book, and she was describing just how beautiful Troy and Crusher were, and I was like, "Oh, this has got to be written by a man." Just the way she wrote about them, and then that's when I realized it was written by Diane Carey, who is straight and married to a man with 3 children. So maybe she's not straight. Maybe she just married a man and had 3 children. I don't know her, but I was surprised. But you can appreciate aesthetics of any gender. I'm just saying, it surprised me a little bit. I thought it was a male perspective. When we see the base, that is totally a recycled matte painting. Man, it was a bad matte painting.
Because I really liked it, but I liked it, but I maybe we've seen it before.
It was one of the more obvious ones, and definitely one they've used before this.
When the Borg show up, maybe this was in the synopsis when we talked about.
Oh, sorry, I had one more note about the poker game. I really like that they let Stephen Hawking win the poker game.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just felt really good.
I wondered how they were going to have him show his hand, and that they found a way to do it.
I don't know. I got that feeling of it being stunt casty. That's the same sort of thing that I didn't really put in those words. But sort of like, this feels kind of, like a Big Bang Theory kind of. We can do this. So
Oh yeah, the way they got Einstein. Yeah.
That would totally be a Sheldon Cooper fantasy scene.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure they had him on the show.
Hawking? Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
So. Yeah. And Nimoy and Will
Wheaton.
You saw the Borg. They weren't in a cube.
They weren't. Yeah, and when they show up on the on Sokka 3, it reminded me of, or at least in my brain, it reminded me of when this is the Star Wars part of the podcast. We haven't had a Star Wars part of the podcast in a while.
At least.
Yeah, in Empire Strikes Back, when they're on Cloud City and C-3PO goes down the wrong hallway, and then when they reconnect him, he's like, "Stormtroopers here?" And my reaction was, "Borg here?" So,
nice.
Well, the fact that they changed up their ship was tricky, and we didn't get a definitive answer in this episode. I swear, maybe it was in the book, but I swear something in the episode said, "Can we see if they built that ship or if they stole it from somebody?"
I was wondering about that too, because I was like, "Oh, that is a different design." I just thought, okay, and I thought that led into the whole like, these aren't your father's Borg kind of.
They're not.
Yeah,
they're not. But I don't like it.
I like the ship. I like the cube too. But when Data's killing the guy, the stunt double there is TOS level.
Yeah.
I rewound it. I'm like, wait a second.
Good or bad?
Stop.
TOS level bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Brent Spiner when he grabs his arm and twists it, and then when he like punches, and maybe it's not the guy he kills, maybe it's the other guy, but he punches him into the table. It's clearly not Brent Spiner, but
They really had this Borg sneer hard, so you would know that there was something up, because the Borgs never sneer, but they went over the top and they're sneering. And maybe this is part of my problem with the ship design too. If you're taking Borg that, not Borgs, because the plural Borg is Borg,
right?
Or you're taking Borg that have deviated from the collective, I feel like it would be a minor deviation to start. So maybe it's almost a cube, but just slightly off. And maybe they sneered just a little bit. The extremeness they went to it took me out of it.
It's more of a parallelogram rather than a cube kind of thing.
Right, exactly. A trapezoid. It's a rectangle instead of a cube.
And they say we're not highbrow on this show. How dare they?
If Picard said, "Look, it's a cube," and Data said, "Well, actually, the length is 75 meters and the width is 74 meters," or something like that. Obviously, think of a bigger number of meters, but you know what I'm getting at.
It's a rectangle. Well, actually, it's a square. Well, actually, all squares are rectangles. Is that the deal, right?
All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Correct.
I'm saying it should be such a slight rectangle that our human eyes don't even notice the perception.
Oh, that's
Data
great.
does.
That would be a great bit. What?
It's actually 2 inches bigger on the left side.
What? I wanted to follow up actually with Jimmy. What didn't? I'm not sure I understand what you didn't like, because I wasn't. This is one of those visual things I didn't see. I wasn't paying attention while it was on the screen.
You just liked that it wasn't a cube, right? Or
I didn't like that it was totally something completely different. Now, I don't remember from part 2 if they took that ship from somebody else, which would make way more sense and make me less angry about it than if they built it themselves. Just the way they presented this episode. And honestly, that was minor. I got more angry much later in the episode. But if they built it themselves, that would
Avatar's
be really
at it
annoying.
again.
I was excited about the Hugh callback. Also,
Yes.
the other thing that tipped me off, I'm like, the Borgs are so advanced, but they still talk to themselves. And then it was like, oh no, there's something weird about them. But yeah, he tells me he got angry. Data asked Geordi, well, did he say what is anger, or how do you know when you're angry? Or,
How do you know when you're angry? Yeah.
yeah.
And Geordi describes angry as just being hostile, and he's like, "Okay, but what is hostile?" And he's like, "Can you describe it without feelings?" No. Well, yeah, I was just angry.
I was frustrated.
Geordi just gave him synonyms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He needed to give him a simile.
I know.
It's as if.
I know.
Come on, buddy. You're reading Rainbow Guy. You should be better.
I was all right. So this is a good scene for me to
You know what?
yeah.
Actually, sorry, Keith. What would have been great there is if Data got angry at him, like, you're not telling me what anger feels like.
I think that briefly occurred to me too, and that would have been no, it would have been amazing.
I mean, it would have messed up the plot they're going for, but yeah, it would have been a
It
fun
would have been
scene.
funny, but not yet.
All right. Yeah, that was frustrating. I kept trying to tell myself, well, this is why Geordi's in engineering, and he's not like a poet. He's not he's not a counselor, whatever. But at the same time, I would like to think that somebody would be clever enough to say these are the physiological symptoms I experience. I have trouble doing this. Something.
He needed to talk to Troy.
Because here's where I went, and this is probably why he didn't go too deep into it. I was like, yeah, it's usually when he gets mad at his Leia Brahm simulation. That's when he gets angry.
Anger is when a woman is wanting her to live her own mind and make her own decisions instead of what you have fantasized about her. It's very frustrating. It's, I mean, I know they call me incel, but that's not really what I am. We neglected to talk about the actors in the opening scene. I feel like we should have. Stephen Hawking was Stephen Hawking, obviously. Best known for being Professor Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
But the Isaac Newton was played by John Neville. This is his only Star Trek appearance. He's best known for The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, The Fifth Element, Urban Legend, and The X-Files.
I thought, I didn't look because everything I looked at was like included part 2, but I thought he was also in A Clockwork Orange. But
he was not in A Clockwork Orange, no. And he wasn't in Descent Part 2. That was it. You got your Isaac Newton.
Right.
You got your Isaac Newton and appreciate him. Albert Einstein was Jim Norton, best known for Straw Dogs, Water for Elephants. That's a more recent movie. I guess it was 12 years ago now, but it seems more recent. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas and The Boy. And Mary Poppins Returns. He played Binnacle. At Hamlet, the 2015 version, he was Polonius. He's got quite a few credits. He plays Albert Einstein in 2 episodes of Next Gen. He was back in the Nth Degree in season 4. He played Albert Einstein, which was a Barclay episode. I know it was 2 seasons ago. I don't even remember it, but he did indeed play Einstein once before on this show. I appreciate they brought back the same actor to do it.
Anthony Sharp is who I thought that was. That's the guy. Clockwork Orange.
Okay.
Yeah, not him.
So then we get, and this is what made me think of the actors, Admiral Nechayev shows up, played by Natalija Nogoluch. I don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry. I know I butchered it.
Yeah.
But she is the first really reoccurring Admiral we get. In the Orville, we always get the same guys, right? Like Ted Danson, Victor Garber, a couple others. And there is an Admiral in DS9 that reoccurs a whole bunch. But this Admiral is the only Admiral in Next Gen, as far as I can remember, other than maybe like a 2-parter or something, that is in more than once. You may remember her because she was recently in another episode. She was in Chain of Command Part 1.
Oh, Chain of Command, that's it, yeah.
With Jellicoe, because we talked about her. She'll also be in 2 episodes of Season 7 and in 2 episodes of DS9. So she gets to play Admiral Nechayev 6 times
Purple Admiral, great hair.
Yeah, the DS9 it's season 2 and 3, so it's before DS9 really gets going. But still, 6 episodes of the same Admiral. I appreciate that. I wish we had more Admirals that reoccurring. Yeah. Even though, I don't know, from the novels, especially the New Frontier novels that really develop her as a character, I like her a lot. In this episode and in Chain of Command, I get really frustrated at her. She's very much like the type of Admiral we don't like.
As annoying as Commodores and Admirals are, I do appreciate the Orville having, like I said, Victor Garber and Ted Danson.
Even though some of them turned out to be villains.
Yeah, and so involved. I appreciate that because, to go way back to TOS and the Menagerie, I love Malachi Throne, and I would have loved to seen him come back more and more as a Commodore, and of course William Wyndham. Well, William Wyndham, of course, but his tragedy was actually better than having him come back. But but Malachi Throne, and I'm trying to think, maybe there was another one or two that would have been fun or good to see again. But.
Oh, I agree. I guess I didn't realize I was totally bucking the Trek system when I made Jameson a regular character on Universe Journey.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I mean, we've seen other admirals. We've seen Jenko and Strongman, but he is our main admiral.
I think the idea you get from the original series is that, depending on where they are in space, maybe this is my quadrant. That's your quadrant.
That makes sense.
That's the impression you get there, but the Orville kind of goes a different way.
I would think so. I was imagining it that, and this was my head canon is there'd be one admiral that oversaw this set of captains. Yeah. But you're right. I think for Star Trek, the admirals more oversee projects or regions, and so captains move between them, which does not make sense to our current corporate structure. But we've talked about how bad our current corporate structure is, so maybe it's a better way. I don't know. But she's questioning Picard on Hugh, and she's like, "You should have killed him. You made a mistake. Next time you have an opportunity like this, I order you to kill him." As much as I wanted to be mad at her because, and I think this becomes a running theme for Picard going forward into the films and in Star Trek Picard, that the admirals aren't always right and he is more moral than them. I think he made the right decision. Even in retrospect, I think he made the right decision. Even if it turns out that Hugh made the Borg this way, I think he made the right decision because it was the right thing to do by their principles. And I get her anger, and she's more pragmatic than Picard is in this situation, but I'm still siding with him.
Yes, I agree.
You got to be better. Yeah, you got to be better.
But I do like that the way it sets up Picard's struggle and showing that he's still struggling with it.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like her, I appreciated the presence that she brought and what she represented, and
yes, for sure,
definitely
the side of the discussion that needed to be had. Those are the sorts of things that we would bring up in past episodes because we're only seeing Picard's perspective as being, well, he was the absolute authority in this episode. He made this call, and it seemed like, we see it from his point of view. Yeah, and we still we're wrestling, going, what if? Shouldn't there have been some sort of ramification? Blah, blah, blah. And we're seeing ramifications. We're seeing. This is what would happen when he actually gets the bosses involved, and they're like, "What? You did this?"
And to be devil's advocate, because Sisko is my favorite captain, I think Sisko would have killed the Borg. I think Sisko would have set back the virus with Hugh and sacrificed Hugh because Sisko worries about the greater good more than the morality. Whereas Picard, and this is a theme we're going to talk about going forward, and in the Star Trek Picard, his hubris, where he has this moral thing, and he is not willing to entertain others' beliefs because his morals are more important than anything else. And I think there's a very strong argument to be made that she is in the right here and he should have killed them. And yet at the same time, I'm still siding with Picard because we're so close to Picard. Were this position reversed and Picard and Nechayev was our main character and Picard was the interloper that came in and scolded her for not being moral, I think I would side with her. And I think that's part of the interesting dynamic. Like I said, I side with Sisko and he does similar things, but actually does more of her side than Picard's side. I think that's an interesting, complex dynamic, and I really appreciate that Star Trek makes us think about it.
She is my annoying person for the episode, but I agree with you. I think she is right, or could be right.
She was my annoyance too, but I think I'm talking myself out of it. I think I'm going to have to pick somebody different.
Yeah.
Because now that we're talking about it, I'm coming around. I'm like, oh no, I'm glad we had her. I'm glad we had her.
What do you guys think Kirk would have done?
He would have found another way.
To kill.
He would have found a third way. Yeah. He would have found a way to destroy the Borg, send the virus back, but save Hugh in the process.
Quite possibly.
That's why he's my favorite character.
He's great.
Okay, so the thing that occurred to me during that debate that they were having is, I'm not sure if it was a debate so much as it's where they're pointing out the the different sides of those problems.
Yeah.
Is that it's not like what Picard did was couldn't have been regarded as strategy of a sort. We saw something. I mean, they explore that actually in the Orville eventually. I don't want to get into the specifics, but so he's got this thing that he's pretty sure will work. He's got a virus that theoretically this is going to happen if we do this. It might not have. It might have done all kinds of. I mean, it could have given them more ammunition to work with in some way. It might have given whatever backfiring thing that could have happened, as opposed to the other possible outcome, which would be this could have convinced them to think differently. Yeah. I mean, his way could have been a different kind of virus, injecting some other kind of independence into them, again, just regarding humanity in a different way.
I think you're right, Keith, but I also think that being his point is taking a much bigger chance than the other way. Mm-hmm. And I would honestly love if that came back to bite him in the butt, because Jean-Luc and his effing hubris. Still my favorite line of dialogue from Star Trek Picard when an admiral's like, Jean-Luc, you and your effing hubris. And she doesn't say effing, she says the word, but our podcast is not rated that way. Yeah. I mean, I agree that it is his hubris. It is a character flaw and yet something we admire him for. I love that. I love that dichotomy. Right.
I just wanted to say that I'm not saying that was his rationale, but that is a strategic way of looking at it. I mean, it was more about, we're doing this because this is the right thing to do. And fine, but it's like they were also disregarding the other possible way, like the drawbacks of the other one and the possible positives of the thing that he did. So
well, having Patrick Stewart play that's a Shakespearean character.
Yes,
who's done in by his own
hubris,
hoist by his own petard.
Yeah, there's own Picard. Yeah, that's right there.
How did I miss that? Oh, damn it.
And we'll see what the and thankfully, because of New Trek, we'll see what the long-term impact on his career is because of it. Mm-hmm. In a way that we wouldn't have had this been the be-all end-all. And I'm so glad that as we're doing this podcast, we have New Trek to look at and see the implications 30 years down the road. Mm-hmm. Because if we just ended at Nemesis, the 10th film, these are things we could debate but not have an answer for. I love that we have. So Data, to try to recreate emotions, gets a lot of stimuli. He watches porn.
Okay, so this is actually my very next note. We know he and Tasha Yar. I don't know if you guys remember her.
They hooked up. Who?
There you go. They hooked
Just for you, Stephen. Just for you.
Thank you. They hooked up. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't erotic imagery work on him?
Well, I think
he didn't feel anything from hooking up with her.
But he was able to perform.
Sure, but that doesn't mean he felt something. He was able to please her. It doesn't mean he felt something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a subroutine you can turn on and off.
Yeah.
But, like a button or something.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Although he did imply during the episode itself that the virus was affecting him in some way. Like he actually wanted to do something, or he was flirting during that, but I don't know.
Well, didn't we theorize that they got together after that?
Yeah, we did.
We know they did.
We did.
So
I think he kept trying and never felt anything. Or she just really liked being with him and was fine that he didn't feel anything. That's the Orville story of the doctor and Isaac. It makes sense
if his programming is, or the way he's thinking is, I have to please her, and I know I have to do A plus B plus C plus D.
Right.
But separate from that makes complete sense. That makes absolute sense. Yeah.
Right. He did take pleasure in the violence, though. Not in porn, but in violence. I feel like he was an incel, right?
I just thought of it as...
I mean, not really an incel.
Right.
The people that prefer anger and violence over pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, that's something else. It
is something else, for sure. It's mental illness, for sure.
Yeah, I just thought it was him. Pleasure, it does make sense that it's pleasure. Like, I just thought of this because I'm not, I don't think what most people would consider a violent person. I've never been in a real fight. But when I played football in high school, or even pickup games, or basketball for that matter, but mostly football, because you're allowed to hit, I enjoyed contact. I enjoyed hitting people. Not inflicting pain, but hitting people or tackling them and hitting them. That made me feel good. Now, if I hit somebody and they got hurt, I didn't feel good. But that's the closest thing I can come up with. Like, I guess, and this is kind of my next note, but which is I'm referencing a PIL song because they kept dancing around what anger is, the Jordy thing and all that. In many of the Marvel movies, all the bad guy has to do is say, "I'm going to mess up your significant other." Then they get so angry they're able to destroy him. And then we have the classic Hulk thing where it's like his secret is I'm always angry, and it's like and so that's what I was thinking through all this. I was just like, and I'll say this too, that from an acting perspective and from a real life perspective, anger is the easiest place to go. I think for humans in general, it's the easiest place. It's the easiest thing to do.
Good point.
And so it makes sense that that's his first one.
When you're watching improv over and over again, especially workshops, and that's just where the easiest thing to jump to when you're going, well, let's take the scene in this direction. The sports thing that you're on that subject. I was going to say that having I'm not used to not play like football like formally, like not like a tuxedo or anything, but I understand it. There's something satisfying about being in a situation where you have to use your physical strength to do something and succeeding at it.
Yeah.
And that feeling of, I made contact, this thing happened. Yeah. But certainly, if it's not like you really want to hurt someone as a result of it, somebody cause serious harm, but it's
in the moment, there's an adrenaline, there's a competitiveness. And, I always talk about, like, I was talking to somebody about this, and they're like, I don't, because a lot of people, the old timers, like, I don't like the players on the field after the game being like, hey, good game and all that stuff. And I'm like, I would play pickup basketball and be so mad. And then as soon as it was done, I'm like, we're playing another game, or where are we going to eat, or where are we going to get drinks or whatever, I can be competitive and then forget about it afterwards. And I think most people are that way, but some people, like, I think the old school people, and that's something we've talked about a lot on this podcast for that matter, is like the old school masculine toxicity kind of thing is like, nope, I'm a guy and I do this all the time. And there are athletes I love from those days, and I appreciate that was their thing. And I took some of that for sure on the court or on the football field, but the court for the most part, because again, I was usually playing with friends. When I wasn't playing with friends, it was a little different. It was definitely a little bit different for sure. Whenever I felt like I crossed the line, I felt like just an idiot afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing with you want to be competitive and go hard and all that, but there were definitely a few times on a basketball court where afterwards, it's like we played a lot of 3-on-3 tournaments. There were definitely some times afterwards where I was like, I'm glad there's no video of that. I'm still ashamed of what I did. I mean, not that the other team was, a bunch of nice guys or whatever, but it's still like, nope, we needed to be better. And I was just like, nope, I'm going to get down in the mud with you. And I was just like, nope, you're an idiot. Yeah, I would be embarrassed if anyone saw those.
I feel like this aggression and competitiveness is the part of the masculine gene I did not get and do not understand. Or have conditioned it out of myself.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of what you're talking about now.
I do think a lot of that, I definitely can't say all of it, but a lot of it I've let go since then. Yeah, because
I think a lot of people do outgrow it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
hopefully.
I don't think I ever had it.
Yeah.
So they get a distress call, and it's a false alarm. And I love Picard's frustration of, tell him to read it this time when we send him the guidelines. Or was it Worf is like, I'll tell them to read it this time? I don't remember who says it, but they're very frustrated because it's just such a great little scene that informs us that they keep getting these false alarms. And I appreciated that. I liked it. Because it makes sense. They would get false alarms.
Wait, did we find out in the episode what the purpose of those, or those? Well, all right.
All those other outposts were worried about the Borg, so they told them to call them if they see them.
Yeah.
And there were lots of false alarms because they jumped at any little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought what was happening was it was the Borg like doing some sort of perimeter testing where that's
they're like, it's a Ferengi ship. It's fine. We're good.
Well, no, I'm saying that maybe they were doing that purposefully, sending them things for false alarms to break down their defense, like a crying wolf thing.
I don't think so. I mean, that's great 4-dimensional chess, but I don't think they were doing that.
I think it's like the Halloween thing where they asked the professor Donald Pleasance or doctor or whatever, and they're like, should we let everyone know that this guy's running around? No, then they'll see him on every street corner. I think that's what's going on here. It's like,
probably.
Hey, there might be some Borg out there. I saw them. I just saw them. They're here.
We get some footage of Hugh. Nice to remember what he looks like and all that. I love the callback. I love the tie-in. Data goes to the holodeck to try to relive the moment and can't spark the can't spark the rage.
Love
I
it.
mean, yeah, there's a missing element, right? And even when he tries to turn off the danger and everything.
Yeah, when Jordy goes in there, is that because I guess, yeah, they know where, they can tell where people are if they're in there. That's right, because we've seen them going on Barclay stuff.
Yeah.
That's right, that makes sense.
I was one of the other novelization notes. I really appreciated this is they tried to describe how Jordy would see the holodeck, Diane Carey did, because obviously he's not going to see the way we see.
Right.
And he describes it being akin, or the way she describes it in his perspective scene, it's akin to him as looking at a cartoon versus looking at live action television, meaning real life is live action and the holodeck looks like a cartoon to him.
Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah, I liked that comparison a lot. It definitely implies that he can't as fully bury himself in a holodeck program as other people can, which does completely invalidate the Leah Brahms stuff. So I guess it doesn't make sense for that in the continuity, but I liked the idea of it.
Well, maybe it looked like Star Trek TAS, the animated series. Maybe that's what they were saying.
I mean, there are some people that fall in love with cartoons, and cartoons can be attractive. I'm just saying.
The holodeck, well, that's for sure. When he's like, I'm going to disable the safety, I was like, no, come on.
It did not turn into a holodeck episode, though.
Awesome.
That makes no sense. I guess that should show there's a short in his system that he's like, why don't we just turn off the safety? You should remember every single time that's been a problem before.
See, I thought that made sense because he's best able to handle it of any crew if the safety's off. And he was also trying to recreate something they can't do without the danger. He identified a missing element in his recreation.
You guys in our Reddit thread all know how.
No, I was sort of impatient because I was with them on that explanation of I understand you have to put up this these strenuous objections and just get it over with, but certainly from Steven's point of view too, I was like, okay, that too, I think they were trying to answer those kinds of complaints preemptively with these explanations, but
Picard orders Crusher to wake up the Borg despite concern that it would hurt him. I appreciate that scene, but I think it also is a good demonstration of how Picard's judgment is not as solid when it comes to the Borg. He has that personal stake. They did not bring up Best of Both Worlds in any real way, but that is always hanging over any Picard Borg interaction.
Locutus or whatever, right? He tries to order.
They mention it, but I don't feel like they delved into it the way they did with the Hugh stuff. But I still think it hangs over every interaction.
I am Locutus. I am Locutus. I am Locutus.
It was.
There's only one Locutus.
Oh shoot! I thought it was.
He's one of one.
I thought it was a good. I'm not even sure I would call it callback necessarily, but it was certainly something that you would expect him to try. Again, this is someone watching along is like, why don't you just try to do the same thing you had to do with Hugh?
Yeah.
Try everything that works. This is him just running through all the strategies.
Oh yeah.
I think to show us it's not going to work. So,
but the waking him up against Doctor's orders, I thought was the more disturbing part of that scene.
Yeah.
The Borg is tempting Data and actually says he would kill Geordi to feel that emotion again. At that point, so Stephen, you were talking about how it makes sense to you that violence is the first easily achievable emotion.
Yeah.
Do you buy that this is Data going through an evolution, or do you think there's something more sinister happening?
No, I was just like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you buying that it was an evolution before this point?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
At first, I'm like, because we've talked about it that I like the idea of, well, at some point he would evolve and his programming would evolve and he'd start to get emotions. And so I was with.
They saved that for the films, but I appreciate what you're thinking about. Yeah.
But then, so I didn't like that. And also when he's like, I have a friend. And then he's like, it's Geordi. I'm like, what? It's Spot. Spot's your friend. Come on. Come on.
You notice the Spot hisses at Data after he comes back from that scene.
Yeah.
So there's something going on there. We should mention this Borg is Croesus. He's played by Brian Cousins, who was the evil Romulan in the episode The Next Phase, the one that was out of tried to kill Geordi and Ro. Yeah. He'll also be as Croesus in part 2 of this thing, but he's best known for Next Generation. Invisible, The Chronicles of Benjamin something, No Ordinary Family, where he just guest starred on one episode of Mandroid. So he has 58 credits, but it doesn't seem like he's a very well-known actor. A lot of one-off guest spots.
Well, it's a lot of nepotism.
He is cousins with everybody.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just glad I got it.
I have one fashion note. I think it's
Okay.
and maybe I've asked this before. Is Troy wearing a weave?
I don't know. I didn't think so, but who knows?
Yeah, it just front of her hair looks a lot different from the back. But my other music note is they keep every time they talk about the Crazy Horse, the ship, the Crazy Horse. I know they're referencing the Native American tribe leader, but all I thought was like, well, where is Neil Young? Although that's not the Crazy Horse, it's just Neil Young and Crazy Horse. But
sure,
it's better to burn out than to fade away. Hey, my mind, rock and roll will never die.
So Data helps Croesus escape. They jump into a transit corridor. That's frustrating because then at this point, Data's like earlier episodes where Data's not in control of himself. You're like, something's going on that's overridden him.
Right.
The Enterprise goes in the transport corridor after him. And I think a lot of what we see from the Borg after this point in films and in other episodes is they start using these transport corridors all the time. That's how they move about. And the Federation, the Federation can't usually follow them in. So I guess they just had to be like right there at the right time to get into it or have the right scan to access it. But
it's good we learned about transdimensional space last week.
Yes.
Big thing.
Or be wearing the right armbands. If you're like, put one on the.
My favorite part of those two going off is Worf going, the Borg. Who's on the shuttle? It's the Borg. Beep, 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 beep. Just say it. And Commander Data, we know.
Should we blame the director for that, Alexander Singer?
Yes.
He previously directed Relics and Ship in a Bottle. This is his third episode. They do let him direct part 2 as well as 2 other episodes.
Better than that.
7. Well, I'm just telling you, he directs the part 2 as well. And then he'll direct 6 episodes of DS9 and 10 of Voyager, which is his last credit on IMDb, is directing Star Trek. So,
So what was his name?
Alexander Singer. The episode was written, story by Jerry Taylor, who we've talked about before, does a lot of the wishy-washy emotional stuff. She'll end up being the showrunner for Voyager. But then the teleplay was by Ronald D. Moore, who we've obviously discussed a lot as well. So they kept it in-house for the finale.
The director was Alexander Singer.
Bastard, because he did a terrible job. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't do a terrible job. That choice made sense for television at the time. It's just annoying now in retrospect, I think.
Yeah.
Geordi's in Troy's seat at one point on the bridge, which weirded me out a bit because I don't know that we've ever seen him sit in Troy's seat next to Picard talking to him.
Yep.
They decide to look for Data. They beam the entire effing crew down.
Right.
How much sense does that make? To the point where they have to leave Crusher in charge because everybody else is gone and she is not in. They get into this more in the novel. But you have, apparently, the chain of command isn't just by rank. You also have to have pilot experience for some reason. So an ensign is further up the chain of command than Crusher. So the fact that they go to Crusher is like, because anybody with pilot experience is beamed down. The fact that Crusher's in command tells you they've beamed everybody down. I mean, not the civilians, but every crew person, which, again, ridiculous. You don't risk the entire crew for one crew member, right?
Yes. And one of my
needs of the many, as Spock would say.
Yes. One of my alternate episodes is really an alternate series, Captain Crusher. I would watch that. I would watch every episode.
Of course.
It might be terrible, but on hair alone, I would watch every episode of that.
Of course.
And I did like seeing they were actually outside. So,
but even though they literally have hundreds of their crewmen roving this planet, one team is Picard, Geordi, and Troy. Another team is Riker and Worf. So instead of splitting up the senior staff with all the juniors, they keep their senior staff together, which again makes no sense. That was, I don't want to pay a bunch of extras. We want to keep multiple main characters involved.
I had to rewind to make sure I heard that right. I'm like, wait, what did you just say? Okay, all right, sure, fine. Go ahead.
Of course, Troy's the one that finds the building. It can't be a random instinct because then we'd have to pay them to talk for this episode.
Right, and she couldn't just say, hey, there's a building over there. She's like, Captain, you have to see this again for dramatic effect or whatever. But it was weird. Her pose on top of above Picard and them. I'm like, that's a weird pose you're doing there. It looks like you're doing yoga, not looking for stuff, but she found stuff. Just to back up a little bit, I think when the Borg attack and land on the bridge and there's all the killing and they killed the one security guard, they killed both the Borg and everything's done. And then where the one security guard got killed, you see another security guard run up with a gun like, I'm going to do something. And it's like, where have you been, buddy? This thing's over. And it just seemed like the guy who comes in after the fight's over or after the fight's been broken up, who's like, "What's going on?" It's like, everything's over. It's cool, man. That's what I thought, man. That's what I thought.
Oh, they should let me at him. I could have taken care of this a lot sooner.
Rewatch that scene just to watch that guy come in. It's hilarious. It's like, what are you been?
I totally missed that, but I love the way you're describing it.
It was hilarious to me. There's the point where put them on transporter permanent lock so we know where they are and we can just grab them. I was just like, when did this finally become a thing? Because I feel like we talked about this since season 1 of
it should always be a thing, right?
Yeah. So anyway,
how much processing power that would take, or whatever. Or
right.
Give me
a lot, but it'd be worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean, throw some numbers and justifications at us, the audience, to say we can't do this because.
Yeah. It also goes to the fickle nature of the sensors and all that stuff. Like, sensors aren't working. Why not? I don't know.
And they really can't keep a lock on all 800 people they have down the planet right now. Right. So they had to ask for it specifically.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the sensor thing too, because I started noticing that every time now because of Lower Decks. I didn't get the joke at first, and then if you're paying attention, most of them actually do pronounce it sensors. And
it's from the original series on.
Yeah. I think I heard Geordie say sensors, but pretty much everybody else is going sensors.
That's because LeVar Burton's not pretentious. So the board, they enter this hall. It's completely empty. They're not there. And then all of a sudden they're there and they're loud. Were they all just like waiting to sneak up and then be loud as they come in?
Yeah.
And that's when they kill the security officer.
What's the point of being a cyborg if you can't do things like that, you know?
Well, and I was dumb enough to be like, oh man, I didn't see this coming. How did I not see this coming?
So, were you quicker than Picard on the uptake though? When Data appears up high and he's like, Data, and Troy's like, it's not him, and Picard's like, what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you figure out who it was before they told you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I knew.
I thought Troy was being a little coy and just being like, that's not Data. He's changed. So yeah.
Right.
Well, apparently Picard's no more observant than you.
I was still holding out hope that there was. Okay, this is about the change he's going through. Yeah. I'm Lord.
Yes.
I'm like,
Well, then we see Data sum up. The sons of Soong have joined together, and together we will destroy the Federation.
Yes.
I didn't like that as a cliffhanger line.
Oh.
I definitely thought it's a trap. As soon as the Borg showed up, clearly. I mean, I think I felt that way before that because, like, you're all huddled together. You're screwed. But yeah, I thought as soon as he's like, I'm Lore, and here's my special guest star, and I'm just like, how about not to be continued? How about we do that? And we just start with a new episode next year, and they just say like, oh man, that was.
I bet you were not expecting Lore to show back up now, are you? Well, I will say, appreciate it while you can, because Descent Part 2 in our next episode is the last appearance of Lore in Trek to date.
Why would you tell us that?
Because we acknowledge the end. Picard season 3 could bring him back. But I don't know. I don't know if he's going to bring him back or not. I'm not saying I know anything about it. I'm just saying this is so far the last appearance of Lore.
Jimmy's a noted liar. He could be lying about all this.
It's true.
But anyway, my reaction was a lot more, I guess, positive, for lack of a better word, and that I laughed quite loudly when I saw that Lore was back. Because he amuses me, and I can't help it. I just love the whole thing.
I've enjoyed Lore in the past. I guess the last time we saw him was Brothers, which was like several seasons ago. Season 4, so almost 3 seasons ago. I'm really disappointed that this is the end of Lore. Like, I hope he shows up in Picard season 3, because if Descent is the last Lore we get in the continuity, what a lackluster ending. I'm sorry, I don't like it.
So is the idea that Lore was leading the Borg, this offbeat Borg, all along?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of like they did the thing.
We don't know Hugh is the leader of these Borgs. The Borg.
That will be dealt with in part 2. What Lore's role is, how they formed, if Hugh is or is not involved, will all be dealt with in part 2. So I don't want to talk about it.
All right. So we don't know who it is.
Right. But
at this point, we just know Lore's involved with them.
Yes.
And we don't know if Hugh's involved or not.
For the purpose of the episode, the way it was structured, I think that's what they were leading us up to. This is a red herring they're dropping.
Leading us to expect Hugh, and instead it was Lore.
Yes.
So tell me about the players on your team. Who's on first base?
Yeah.
Hugh? Yes, Hugh is on first base.
Hugh,
Now, I'm asking you, who is on first base?
tell me the lore of who's on second.
There we go. Now we got
Yes.
it. That's it. So I had one note going back. So we know that security guard carrying the laser rifle, he might as well have been wearing a red shirt. But also, I'm disappointed in the laser rifle technology or the look of it. Because, like, the laser rifle he's carrying, maybe because he's outside and it's natural, does not look, and maybe it's because nobody can be Shatner or Kirk. He just looks like, I'm carrying this weird thing that's, in theory, is a laser rifle that I'm also never going to get to shoot, as opposed to Kirk, where no man has gone before. Again, one of my favorite episodes. He kills a god with a laser rifle. But, and this is where you guys know about my alternate podcast, my right wing podcast, Star Trek podcast, because I think laser rifles don't look as cool as real rifles, and I was paid by the NRA to say that. So just so you know, but I don't think they do. Well, in this
300 and some episodes of this podcast, I'm sure no one's taking you seriously right now, so I won't worry about it.
In anything I say.
If this is your first episode listening, go back and listen to a few others.
But
No,
I mean,
honestly, I thought you were being serious about that part. I mean, as far as cinematically,
I am serious about, like, it just looked awkward and cheesy. But like I said, but where no man has gone before, and I know we've seen laser rifles in other episodes where they don't look as bad as this one. But maybe it's just because I was like, dead man walking. That's my last note. I have one other alternate episode. Mine is called Ascent. Data experiences euphoria. I guess this is of its time because the guest star is Sydney Sweeney from the HBO series Euphoria. So Data ends up getting involved in a high school world and getting involved in drugs and a lot of other and illicit sex and all kinds of other stuff.
I have an alternate episode for the novelization.
Okay.
In which it would be the title would be Descent Parts 1 and 2, and there's gonna be a break in the middle where they actually describe commercials and have maybe like a week's worth of other television in between it.
I love it. I love it. Diane Carey should have thought of that. I don't have a specific alternate episode. My alternate episode is just be better. If this is your last, I'm not going to get into part 2, but I do remember what happens in part 2. But what I'm saying is we have already at this point in Next Gen been conditioned to believe that part 1s are always better than part 2, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't think part 2 is going to redeem this for you. This is their last season finale before the series finale, right?
Huh.
And they knew going into the 7th season it was their last season. This was because the show was still on top. They ended it to make films, not because it was failing or because it was done.
Right.
It really bothers me that this was the last season finale cliffhanger and also the last lore story, because both of them deserve better than what we get here. Both of those things.
I just thought of another alternate episode actually.
Okay.
So we get to the end, we get to the cliffhanger, we look up. To reveal who is leading them, and it actually ends up being Mark Twain. to bookend the entire.
I'm sorry, Stephen. As much as you dislike Mark Twain, I feel like that improves this episode by at least 20%.
Yeah, I would have laughed then.
But he escaped to the future. We get a flashback that he escaped to the future, and this is what he's done.
But he's all in Borg gear. He's in a
and he's made them all read Mark Twain, so they all act like Huckleberry Finn.
Oh my God. Sawyer. They just like all put on straw hats out of nowhere. They just like they reach out.
That's a lower deck plot. Plot arc. It's got to be. Who is your annoyance in this episode?
So we had the Commodore, and we decided, that's okay. So I'm going to go with the more obvious one for me. Lore is my annoyance in this episode.
I'm going to go with Data. I don't remember what the explanation is for his behavior, but I do remember I wasn't satisfied by it, and I'm frustrated that he's acting this way. Yeah. I had written down Nechayev, but I agree with you. I'm taking it back.
Yeah.
I believe I'm actually going to go with Geordi, which I don't usually do, but it's that scene was frustrating me so much about trying to describe what anger is and just kind of going around in a circle and not understanding. I'm talking to an android. Maybe I could change my wording up a little bit better than just finding synonyms.
Well, it's like he was talking to a blind man. It's like, how can you describe red to me? Well, it's like if you put yellow. No, can you describe orange to me? It's like if you put yellow and red together. I don't know what those are, you idiot.
Exactly. It just.
Yeah, that's exactly. That is what it is. Yeah.
Who you had a drink with?
first 30 minutes of Angry Data. That's what I'm that guy I like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had Picard written down because he's been through trauma and it's being relived. But after our discussion, I'm frustrated with him that he beamed the whole crew down.
Yeah.
And I've come around to Nechayev, so I'm going to have my drink with Nechayev and commiserate with her on how Picard is being ridiculous.
Well, she pushed him to it.
Yeah.
When they were, rounding everybody up for the away mission. Who are we supposed to get? Yeah, bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone? Even the ensigns?
Even Guinan. We should have had a shot at Guinan down there in the search party. If they had movie just a shot from the back of the hat, we would have known she was part of it. Or alternate episode, they even set Crusher down so Whoopi was in command of the Enterprise. Yeah. That would have been ridiculous. Keith, who are you drinking with?
Everyone.
The whole search party.
That's a good answer, actually. Probably lore at this point.
Okay.
for similar
the
reasons.
Episode. Yeah. Let's stick with our two-part theory. Although there have been several two-parters this season, I forgot. We had Chain of Command, we had Times Arrow, and we have Birthright. So this is the fourth two-parter that's at least partially in this season. Let's start against Times Arrow Part 2, though. Start near the bottom. Better or worse than Times Arrow Part 2?
I'm going to say above. I'm going to jump right in early on something.
I was going to go below.
Ooh.
No.
I think it's that bad. I am that annoyed with it. Keith?
Wow.
I liked Angry Data too much. I like the first part of Angry Data too much. I like what was going on there with the exploration.
I haven't seen the end of this, but I've not that many.
Below this was TNG, the episode Suspicions, where Crusher puts her career on the line to solve the scientist's murder. I guess maybe I'll let it be better than that. Below that's Aquiel, which I definitely think it's better than Aquiel, but because Aquiel is so cringy, even though I don't like this episode at all. We're going up then for you two. Let's see how far up you want to go. I'm going to skip up several, and then we'll come back down if we need to, because I have a feeling you guys are going to go up higher. Let's put it up against a fistful of Datas. Data, the Western and the holodeck.
I'm an above fistful of Datas person. I know you guys like that a lot more than
I did like that one.
I mean, like from my perspective right now, I don't remember liking it that much.
I
liked it. It was fun.
I'd say there aren't things I hated about that.
Troy is Durango. Come on.
That might have been the thing.
Close. It's getting closer the more I think about it. I'm still going to go above, but it's not by a lot.
Oh, above. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, it's a good thing I skipped like 6 episodes.
Wow, okay.
Because we're already way over on time. And I'm clearly out of this. I want this to be at the bottom of the season. Above that's The Chase.
Below.
Yeah, I can go below that.
Okay, good, because you was going below either way, because I've already...
That's right.
We would have just seen how far up you were going to go.
That's right.
So... Man, I don't think it's 16 of 26. I don't think it deserves to be that high. Next week, we're going to break down the Next Generation Season 6 as a whole.
Maybe we'll change our mind about this.
Before we finish off the DS9 season, there's only one episode left, but we're gonna wrap up Next Gen Season 6 next week, and then we'll come back with the DS9 finale and its wrap up the 2 weeks after that. Until then, live long.
And stay angry, my friend.
Anger is
and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?